So there's a list of duties with reference to what are the parameters or the general duties of what security professionals do in corrections, especially specifically in private detention programs. Those who work in the security sections, they do anything from enforcing rules and regulations to include counting inmates and making certain they're in their assigned locations when they're supposed to be. There's also supervising their activities and making certain that they're participating in their assigned activities when they are supposed to be in those assigned activities. Okay, like for instance, if they sign up for some religious activity, that they're actually there at that religious activity for that time. Other instances could be, recreation, that they're actually participating in that recreation activity and not holding, meetings versus participating in the recreation activity. There's things that are expected of the security with reference to monitoring and enforcement, with reference to how and what behaviors are acceptable in a secure environment. Another thing to add is searching for contraband. In most cases or most instances, security personnel will physically check inmates, and what's the norm is, and also in most jurisdictions, in accordance with federal laws or state laws, a male security professional or correctional officer will check a male inmate, or a female correctional professional security officer will check a female. Okay, and they'll pat them down and check obvious areas for obvious signs of contraband. Most times, the things that will be contraband will be food items or weapons. It could also be drugs and or other things that are of value inside the detention center, such as phones. Okay. Other places that have to be checked are, their housing areas, where they actually sleep, by their beds and underneath, around their toiletries, and up in their ceiling areas, and areas that you would not consider to be a place that would be, easily to hide something, but they've managed to find ways to hide things there. So as creative as the human mind can be, then you would have to be as creative or more in order to find these items. Okay, and that's your responsibility as a security professional in the correctional environment, is to find these items and to figure out and piece together, be a detective and figure out exactly what all this stuff, put it together in order to help develop information to help reduce criminal behavior and eliminate any type of activity that's against the policy when it comes to safety and security inside the detention program. Another thing is their conduct. Okay, it might at times, inmate conduct, as far as them complying and not complying with rules, might be considered frivolous or not a big deal. But what happens sometimes with folks that are in custody, they may be testing you. And so if you don't write down or document their behavior, they might just take it over to the next level, So they finally feel like they've pushed that button, or they feel like they've gained control of you. Okay, so documentation and also monitoring and reporting their behavior is critical, because that's the way of managing the behavior. Because remember, in most instances, this is what got them into the jail system, into the criminal justice system in the first place. So by you documenting this information, this also helps members of the social services team help identify and curb some of these behaviors, or find other things or methods in order to get them to reduce or deal with the recidivism. But most instances, they're not going to stop. Sometimes it's mental health concerns. So you're documenting, it's going to save you from, the situation escalating, or if the instance does escalate, you have actual documentation that over time, you've actually had encounters with this individual, and it's gotten to that point where, you've given them warnings, and, it wasn't something that was where it was your word versus theirs. It was more of, they've been behaving this way for a period of time, and you've used kind of like a you've consulted with management, your supervisor, and there was a strategy, or there were tools in place with reference to interaction, with reference to the inmate's behavior. So like I said, inmates may have many reasons why they're doing what they're doing. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then, like I said, the last part of this was aiding in their rehabilitation and counseling them. Sitting down with them, and if you need a witness, having another correctional professional with you and actually discussing, your concerns and documenting all of this and trying to help them along. Maybe your interaction and your intervention might cause them to really think about their behavior and bring them forward with reference to, making positive changes in their life, possibly after they're released from being in custody at the detention program, or if they're moved from that detention program to another program or another housing unit. So there's the things to think about. So those are some of the duties or responsibilities of a correctional professional, or and a security personnel that works inside a correctional program. Things to think about, and we'll move on to the next section. Like I said, these are some of the duties, not all of them, but these are like the primary duties that you might come across, especially when you're working in the housing unit.